Hi, you are watching SightsIn Plus, and this is Romesh Srivastava. Please to subscribe the channel for the HR news, for HR updates, and conversation with the top-notch CHROs, thought leaders, and business heads. Today, we are trying to dive deep at how to have the best talent. And we have two senior HR leaders today. Let me introduce Ms. Sahana Shankar. She is the Director, Human Resources at Duck Creek Technologies, and Mr. Shourya K. Chakravarty. He is Chief Human Resource Officer at Aptech. Welcome, both of you. First, I would like to understand that as a HR leader, what do you look in a candidate? While the hiring, that may be the fresher, that may be the experienced candidate.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm really excited and looking forward to this conversation with both of you. And thanks for the question. It's so relevant in today's era as we're looking at, hiring experienced professional as well as freshers here. Some of the critical aspects I feel organizations do look for, especially when we're looking at hiring somebody fresh from campus. I would start with listing few of them. One, of course, is communication skills. I cannot emphasize enough about, being able to communicate effectively with your colleagues. And especially post-COVID, where a lot of organizations have gone remote and some have come back to hybrid, being able to communicate effectively continues to be one of the very critical skills. Second, I would talk about is being able to multitask. As an employer today, we are looking at, even fresh from campus, somebody who can understand customer needs, look at, dividing the time proportionately, meeting deadlines, and being able to work under different timelines as well. So being able to multitask is again a very critical skill. Uh, the other skill is flexibility. When we started off, there was maybe few technologies that were in market, but today, every day, there's a set of new technologies coming in. And having that mindset of being flexible is again a very, very critical skill we're looking at. Being a team player and being able to collaborate effectively and having a analytical and a research mindset. I would always say that all of us have problems, but how do we have a solution mindset? And we are looking at some of these skills as a critical skill at Duck Creek.
And Shourya, what is your take on this? And also, please, if you can elaborate that, how do you assess these skills? That would be also great.
Romesh, I would divide that into two. The qualities we look for in candidates, freshers and experienced. Freshers, I think, is the attitude to learn, whether they come with an open attitude or whether they come with an I know all attitude. Because at the end of the day, attitude defines altitude. If they have an attitude to learn, skills and technologies or whatever it is, the subject matter can be taught. So that is for freshers which are concerned. For experienced candidates, the number one thing which I would look at is the cultural fit. That is very essential because very often you see at a mid to senior level, sometimes people leave. What we call the early attrition is because of they say there's a mismatch between values or, certain things don't match. That's actually a cultural fit, both from the company side as well as from the individual side. So that is very important. Psychometric assessments are a good tool to assess whether the candidate matches what the company is looking for in terms of the culture, in terms of the environment. Now, let's also accept it that no candidate can be 100% fit. Even if a candidate is 65 to 70% good enough for the job, I think we should go ahead. Having said that, if the cultural fitment is not there and the candidate is good in other things, it will not work. Because remember one thing, if the culture is there, only then you can ensure profitability, you can ensure growth, you can ensure success. So that is something which I would lay stress on.
Sure, you also highlighted about the culture fit. So, of course, the hiring is the foundation of the culture, and rest all the things, maybe the employee engagement, retention. That is also part of culture. So that is also the hiring is also foundation for employee engagement, retention, and all the things. You also shared that psychometric assessment that may help you. in this? What are the other tools that you see, some situational questions that maybe like you may discuss during the time of interview? What are the other things? How do you assess this cultural fit issue? That is very important.
So, Ramesh, one of the things is whether your interviewers are trained and seasoned to grasp responses between the lines. If you pose a question that has the interview handled conflict, what were the situational aspects which the person looked at? You can gauge whether a person is high on ego or is collaborative or is whether a team player or a team spoiler, or I know it all, you follow it my way or no way. Those kind of things usually come out during a conversation which you are having with the prospective candidate, especially at the mid to very senior levels. That is something very, very important. How you question, how you probe. There's no one recipe to it. During the discussion, one question may have a response, and that response may lead to further discussions. And in all that, you will kind of gauge whether the person is actually giving tailored responses or natural responses, if I were to put it. And you can easily make that out.
Sahana would like to add here something.
On that aspect, as Shourya was mentioning, while we need to train managers, which is critical, one of the approaches we had taken in the past was to define very clearly what is the competency framework in the organization. And let's take an example here. When we're looking at hiring somebody fresher or somebody who is into mid or senior role, if there are certain competencies of the organization, let's take, for example, customer centricity is a competency. We say entrepreneurial spirit is a competency. Collaboration is a competency. How do I enable managers, and not just managers, I always extend it to even the talent acquisition team, that from the first go, when you make a call to the candidate, you're having an exploratory discussion, how do you assess some of these competencies through the entire process itself? And we have gone length and breadth in terms of training managers, giving them handbooks, giving them questionnaires, training them on saying, how do you get situations from the candidates? Ask candidates to share real-time situation of how they've demonstrated customer centricity. How have they gone about identifying a new business lead? How have they collaborated between different functions within the organization? So very specific pointed questions, and that will bring out real-time situations, how they've demonstrated these competencies at work, what has worked for them, what has not worked for them. And one of the beautiful questions, Romesh, I have seen has worked for me so far is, every organization has set of values, set of cultures that you've defined. I always ask the candidate, which is that one value do you relate the most and why? And that tells me the mindset and perspective, saying, why somebody is relating to Duck Creek, why do they relate to a particular value within Duck Creek? And I think that's a beautiful aspect to see how culturally they are aligned and how culturally they are not aligned. So some of these things, and of course the psychometric assessment has come in a long way for all of us.
Absolutely. I think very beautifully you both have, what the panelists have described about how do you assess the culture fit during the conversation, during the interviews. See, when you hire the best, it means you must have also the enough talent pool, enough talent that should be also there. So how do you attract the candidates so that they apply in organization, so that you can have the enough talent so that you can select the best candidate out of this? So what is your take on this?
I think hiring the best talent is something that I'm sure Shaurya would agree with me, that as industry we have always been on a war footing, and more so with post-COVID, where there are no geographical barriers, Romesh. Talent could be anywhere, and everybody's scouting for the best talent. Some of the things that I always feel organizations can look at doing, in terms of when we want the best talent, is start off with, can employees be our advocates? rather talent acquisition team trying to look at multiple different channels for hiring. If employees can be our biggest advocates, it could be any social media platform, and all of us know that today, whether it is from Facebook to Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. So I always start off, that's the best way to get the best talent. If employees can advocate for Duck Creek, that's the first best thing that we can do. Second, of course, I start off by saying that talent acquisition team needs to be extremely proactive. If you want the best talent, we can never go and do it in a very reactive approach. It can never be a last minute strategy that I want somebody onboarded in next 30 days. So it needs to be a very strategic partnership with business, understand what new business is coming in, what pipeline of talent we need, what kind of skill sets we need to build. And that partnership needs to start very early on. That's when you get the time to really scout the best talent. I would always say that, if you have a great culture, you can give great career opportunities, talk about some of these stories, in social media platforms. Automatically talent wants to come and work for you. And we all know that, if you build that kind of a social media brand for yourself, the talent would want to come, and then it becomes a little more easier to source the best talent.
Shourya, Sahana was talking about some of the employer branding and also some how we can use the social media for the hiring as well, also for the employer branding. How important is the job description?
If you ask me, in today's world, people have come to accept that the job description will be a little bit fluid. While it is good to determine the KRAs, but a job description is never the right description for the job. I dare say that, right? Because there are many things which change once you are on the job. Your macroeconomic factors may change, your business scenarios may change, your way of working may change. For example, AI, ML, AI coming in a big way may change a lot of things. So you cannot stick to the original job description. So your job descriptions have to periodically be reviewed in terms of what are the business needs. That's number one. Ramesh, going back to your question on the best fit, I would say, companies need to look for the right fit, not the best fit. The best fit may not always be the right fit, but the right fit in the long term will always turn out to be a best fit, right? And see, social media presence is important. You can publish all your information on the job, on the company, on, say, platforms like Glassdoor, which every candidate views. And I'm happy to say that Aptech as an employer is rated as 4.3 on Glassdoor, which is a pretty decent, or rather a high employer rating. And we all know that as employers, we can't manipulate that rating, right? It's what people say. Having said that, it is important that all kinds of reviews are out there, not just the good ones. Because if you read only the good ones, people would wonder that, something may be fishy around there. There are no negative reviews. So it's good to be open and transparent there. And yeah, job descriptions usually these days are published on social media as well. So be it. It's important, but not the only factor.
Agree. Job description is for the current time. You cannot predict what is going to happen after 6 months or 1 year. There could be a lot of changes. Absolutely, but this is the first time you can see that this is the requirement and you can apply for. Absolutely. Sahana, right now, the lot of emerging technologies are also there, and if you look for the hiring, so you receive lots of applications, maybe 90% are matching to your requirement and not matching to your requirements. Maybe some, applications may not be relevant at this point in time. Maybe we can use later on. How do you see this technology is helping in hiring when it comes to the right fit or best fit?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that technology has been an enabler for us as a HR function and specifically for talent acquisition. One of the big things that has picked up, a lot of focus is the D&I space. And, even within talent acquisition, we are really looking at how do we bring in diversity. And technology has been an enabler there as well. So any of the new age tech platforms, whether it is in terms of, enabling screening of profiles, helping us in terms of, making suggestions as to who could be the closest fit to this particular role, sharing with us in terms of some of the background data based on the social media, scanning that the technology would do, and as well as in terms of D&I, specifically trying to remove any kind of bias that comes in during the hiring process. And while all of this technology has helped, the other area that I have seen, Romesh, technology playing a big role, and I've always been a big advocate saying that we need to measure what matters. And talent acquisition and hiring is a space where there's a lot of metrics available. And technology has been a big enabler for us to measure those metrics real time. Whether it is offer declines, how many profiles you've sourced, what channel the profile has come in, what has been our joining ratio. So overall, I would say that technology from a hiring perspective has been a big enabler, and that's how we're able to really get the best talent from anywhere.
And Shourya, you both belong to tech organizations. So how do you see the generative AI has changed hiring patterns in last couple of years?
Tech-enabled processes definitely need to be adopted, if you ask me. Everybody in the HR team specifically and other functions need to be abreast with what Chat GPT can do, what AI can do. It's just marvelous. I've been experimenting a little on 4.0, and it's just out of this world what you can do with it. So that's a very important that people understand what technology and data analytics can do. In fact, if you can do an analysis of your attrition, you can predict your future requirements. That's something which everybody probably does. Even we do it. That helps you to arrest the gap between a person leaving and the new person joining in. Very critical, so that the knowledge loss, for lack of a better word, knowledge loss is less. That's something which can happen. And yes, if you don't adopt technology, you are dead.
Yeah, absolutely. So the uses of technology, and also we have discussed that how we can put the behavioral questions during the interview, how we can put the situational questions during the interview. But still, sometimes there are certain errors from the company side, so certain mistakes, and these could be like unconscious biases, and this could be not use of proper technology. Maybe there are so many mistakes that companies can commit during the hiring process. And sometimes candidate also, commit some mistakes while the hiring process. So in your experience, how have you seen that what the errors are there, what the mistakes are there, which can be avoided by both companies and by the candidate as well?
See, I think very often it is the talent acquisition team which is held accountable for sourcing for the hiring. Hiring is not the talent acquisition team's responsibility. It is the hiring manager's responsibility. And the hiring manager is that specific functions person who needs that talent. The human resources function or the talent acquisition function can at best shortlist a candidate basis the competencies, skills, matrix, or whatever the job description. But the final say has to be of the person who the person will be working with. That is the reporting manager. Secondly, if there is a conflict at that point, that is when HR can play a facilitative or a catalyst role in ensuring that the biases are minimized. Let's accept it. If we say there are no biases, we are lying to ourselves. There will be biases. Whatever biases are there, for example, if the candidate's attitude is good, the experience is appropriate, but the candidate has changed jobs very frequently. He's changed jobs, so he may not stick here. You can't predict that. You don't yet have a model where you can just enter the input and it gives you that how long will the person stay. Even that model could go wrong, right? So we need to understand that these are the kind of biases. There may be the candidate may have had certain reasons for not for a short stint. For example, people returning from a break. You know, another bias is okay, we look for people returning from a break so that we can manage the costs. Wrong approach. Don't ever do that. Right. These are some of the biases which need to be addressed. And that is where I feel uh, HR or the leadership team of the organization can drive those behaviors. That's my take on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just to add
absolutely.
that,
Yes, please.
I think Shaurya did state this very early on, and that was very important. And I feel, we need to drive that message back, and which we commonly hear from businesses. We're looking for a perfect candidate, and you would never find a perfect candidate. It's never 100% right. There's always a job description, and you're trying to always look at who could be that candidate, who's the closest fit for that. So whether it's in life, whether it's at work, there's never a situation that somebody is 10 on 10 on everything that you've asked in a job description. And especially when you're doing a tech hiring, you're hiring for any new age skills, looking for somebody who has every skill set that you want, every new technology, hands-on experience, extreme in-depth. And that's where I always, drive back this message with the business that we need to look at who's the closest fit. So that I feel is the first thing, where we are always trying to, keep scouting for the, ideal match or a perfect candidate. Second would be in terms of, ignoring the culture fit, which again, we spoke in depth in the past as well, that, that is something that cannot be ignored, especially in the world that we're currently living in. Culture fit becomes extremely important. And some of the other mistakes that happens is the bias, and I think that's where the DNI spaces come in, with this so much of sensitization that we're doing, enabling managers to understand, what could be some of the unconscious bias that comes in, and trying to eliminate as much as those biases that can happen during the hiring process. And the last one would be that, the challenge is always when, there's an attrition that happens, is when, we want to immediately look for hiring somebody as on yesterday. And that's what we always hear from the business, that I wish I could get this, position filled as on yesterday. And that's where I say the partnership of being proactive as much as possible. And, rather being very, very reactive, then, there's always a time lag in terms of getting the right candidate on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we try to reach a conclusion, we jump to the conclusion very quickly. So we don't follow the entire process of recruitment. We need to assume, yeah, nahi, aisa to hoga. So that's why sometimes we also get into the biases, and also you are not doing the assessment correctly. So these may be the mistakes the companies can avoid. From the candidate point of view, what is your experience? What the candidate generally commit the mistakes, and how they can, avoid these mistakes?
From a candidate perspective, some of the common mistakes I would say is, especially when they're looking at a role perspective, I've always seen that, they expect, saying that what more can this role offer, and looking at a fast track career growth. We all are living in a world where, it's all about instant gratification. They would want something extremely fast track. Having those conversations during the hiring process itself, I think a lot of times we've seen candidates who come back to us and say, I'm looking at a higher designation, higher title. uh, I think sometimes we're so driven away by some of these aspects. While I say it's extremely important, from a candidate lens, we really need to look at, what does this role offer to me? What will I learn something new? Is this going to be value adding to me in the long run, rather just having a very, very narrow perspective about, what the role is looking at, or what the title is looking at. I think that's one of the biggest common mistakes that I've seen, candidates make, in terms of keeping a very narrow lens of the work that you want to do, and what will you actually want to contribute there.
Yeah, right. And they need to get prepared before appearing, for the interview. They need to understand that what is the requirement of the company, what the company is looking for, what is the culture of the company, what is the financial position of the company, so many things. So that may
Yeah,
also help to the candidate to understand the
and I think a
company
lot
and
of
the
times
requirement of.
candidates do come underprepared. While I do see it's getting better today, right? Spend some time understanding about the organization, the culture, and very, very important thing we always say is ask questions. And I always encourage that, if you're a candidate, please be prepared with the questions. And that shows how keenly you're interested in the organization. And that also shows your willingness to understand. So, we've seen situations, a lot of candidates just don't have any questions for the panel members. They've not done their own research about the organization. You need to showcase those level of excitement and preparedness. And if you have not showcased that, that's going to be a big showdown.
Sure, I think we have discussed all the important elements of the subject, and we have also,
Mhm.
at the end of time right now. So, any of your final and concluding remarks?
See, and this I speak from experience, is it is very important to understand when interviewing any candidate who's experienced, what was the trigger for that person to look out for a job. That will give you a lot of insight into the person's uh, uh, mental makeup or attitude at work. That is something which needs to be probed. You know, let's all remember that for any relationship to be successful between an employer and an employee, it works both ways. It's not a one-way traffic. And it is incumbent upon the employer to ensure that the new joiner is settled in the job, is culturally tuned in, and only then will the person be able to perform. So I think it's very important that we understand what was the trigger to look out for a job, be it money, be it for a supervisor, whatever it could be. So that's those would be my final comments for this discussion.
And apart from this, candidate experience is very important. Whether the candidate is selected or not, maybe the different story, but we need to offer the good experience to the candidate. Thank you so much, Shaurya and Sahana, for joining the conversation and sharing your wonderful thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank,
Pleasure.
thank you.